Welcome back on this Wednesday, and that is a special day because we get the big guns. Bob Kravitz from The Athletic, Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. Both at the game last night, guys.
Yes, sir.
I think the thoughts are pretty much the same. Indiana built a big lead, looked good doing it, got lazy. Three-point shooting is a problem. Regular shooting is a problem.
Free throw shooting.
Free throw shooting is a problem. Things we've heard before, ironically, but it still looked different, and the guys sound different. I know they're hitting these shots in practice, but there's a difference in practice in the game. I don't know. I don't have the
That's
answers.
what Archie Miller used to say.
I know
all
that's
the
it.
time.
It sure does.
We're hitting them in practice. Well, I don't give a damn what you're doing in practice. Hit them in a game.
Here's what's concerning, though. They didn't hit him in practice. Xavier Johnson said they went 4 for 24 in the scrimmage, too.
Oh,
yeah,
that's right.
He just had that comment. He just said that. We played that. I was like, I think that Miller Kopp going 0 for 3 shows me that maybe part of that is some synchronicity problems because he's a proven shooter. He's played for 3 years in the Big Ten. He's played in Assembly Hall on the other side, which is difficult. So they did. I don't know. They just didn't seem to get into a rhythm last night.
Well, to me, I think Kopp is going to prove to be a really good shooter. Just watching him and his form and his release, he looks like a shooter. I think Parker Stewart's got a chance to be a decent shooter from the outside. But I think they're in a similar situation to where they were last year, where you really only had 2 guys who could hit from the outside with any regularity, and they need more than that if they're going to play the kind of style that Mike Woodson wants to employ. So, look, I think this is going to be a very similar season to what we've seen in the past. I'm not going to read too much into one game, but it's hard to imagine that suddenly they're going to become a team that's going to shoot 40% from 3.
No, and Rick last night on the postgame show with Todd Leary, a question he's been able to go to practice, and the question came up: is anybody or any of the coaches a shot doctor? And I'm like, well, I don't think that any of the assistant coaches are considered that. And they asked, does anyone work with him? And Todd said, no, that's the one thing that he didn't see is anybody working with anyone on shooting mechanics. He saw a couple of guys working after on their own and whatnot, but he kept saying, hey, they all have my number. And he praised, I was shocked, and you may be, but who do you think he praised when I said, all right, when you guys were playing, you had a team of guys that are all great shooters? He goes, well, that's not exactly true at the beginning. He said there were some things we had to work on as well. But do you know who he praised as being a guy who could catch things and just give you a tip here and there that helped improve him and some of the other guys back then?
Dan Dockage.
Bingo. you nailed it. He said, because he may be surprising to you, but he just, for whatever reason, could sometimes just see things and just give you this little tip that would help you. And it seems like today people don't want to help them change their shot. They just want to kind of help them moving along. But obviously there's some guys, and Trace Jackson Davis is the first one that comes to mind. He's got to work on his regular jump shot, as we've talked about for 4 or 3 years now. At the free throw line, he goes over.
He made the one from the elbow, 17 feet, looked good.
Yeah,
I was just, honestly, it was only one, but I was just glad to see him take it. And
he also made a nice right hand move down on the block.
Right, to try the right hand. And, Race Thompson took 1 or 2 threes. I mean, that's what Mike wants them to do. And, whether they're going to make any of them is a completely different deal. Going back to Dan, he obviously has the coach's eye, but how come he couldn't shoot?
Hey, but isn't that the truth in a lot of things? Guys are not always those that do, and those that can't teach, right? That's the old saying,
right?
Those that can
turn on the radio at 10 o'clock because I know who's going to get blown up now. At noon.
That's okay. I'm used to it.
I think Woodson needs to be the guy. He's the 5th all-time leading scorer at IU. He was an offensive player. I think he's the guy who can teach shooting. And the one thing I'll give him credit for is the most interesting comment I thought he made after the game was, that's the way the game's played now. We have to keep shooting the shots. And I think after 2 or 3 years of these guys playing, feeling like I better not take that shot. If I miss that shot, I'm coming out of the game. He's indoctrinating them to think it's okay if you take a shot. It's okay if you take a couple shots and you miss them. I didn't really see one instance in the game where he pulled somebody for taking a bad shot. And they did.
And they did take a few bad shots.
Huh? They took some. Yeah, Grace Thompson took a couple quick ones from the corner. He pulled Xavier Johnson for those turnovers, and he pulled, I think, Galloway for a defensive miscue, but he didn't pull anybody for taking a bad shot. So I think he tried to change the mindset of take these shots. I believe you can make them. Keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's there were a couple timeouts that he called. Boom. There was a defensive lap where they gave up an easy 3. And like you mentioned, and that's what he was focusing on. He was just teaching moments. And they're going to be challenged coming up. I talked about Northern Illinois is their next opponent. They beat Washington on the road last night. So you got that. St. John's put 119. I know it was Mississippi Valley State. They scored 119 points. Syracuse wins. They've got some challenges that are coming up. That are teams that are Northern Illinois. They're going to give Indiana everything they have. Eastern Michigan did. They're coming. Those teams are coming in here and looking up there and like, okay, Indiana still does not have that all factor right now coming into Assembly Hall like they used to. People are now coming in and saying, hey, maybe we got a shot.
Absolutely. The veil of invincibility has been lifted. And it was lifted a long time ago, honestly. And I just want to say this one thing. It's sort of unrelated to what we're talking about, but wasn't it great to be back in it wasn't a full house, but to just have fans there and see all those people and hear all those people. And, in the midst of the pandemic, I got to a point where I had forgotten what sports were like with fans and almost got to the point where I was like, are they really that important? Because frankly, it was nice going to a game with no traffic, easy to park, easy to get to the restroom.
The elevator wasn't crowded.
You know what? I miss those people. I miss you all. It was so great. When Mike was introduced, when IU would go on a roll, when the game got tight and they needed the crowd to get involved, they were there. And it was just nice to go back to Bloomington and hear Assembly Hall. And I'm looking forward to going up to Purdue as well.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised how loud the crowd was. I don't know.
Pardon me.
Did they announce a sellout? I guess all the tickets were sold, but it was more full than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, early, especially for an early game. That 6:00 start made it difficult. When I was trying to get to the game, I'm like, "What the hell's with all this traffic?" Well, I look, it's 5:00. I'm like, going, "Well, that's part of the reason right there." So, but yeah, it was great. I love seeing the ushers because the ushers are all the same people that you see for years. It's just great to see them. You're like, "Hey, how are you?" And it was just great to see everybody. So yeah, it was a fun night to be out there, and the fans. They seem to be happy to be able to be out there, more importantly.
Absolutely.
But they got to start winning and doing the things that they're not doing right now. Defensively, they look great in the beginning. I mean, that was a wonderful start. They really smothered Eastern Michigan and held them to under 30% shooting for the most of the entire game until the very end. And when they went on that run, and they ended up shooting 31% for the game, but they shot nearly 40% from 3, and that's what got them in and kept them in there. And man, sometimes there was that Louis Farrakhan. I'm just kidding. Farrakhan played. He hit 3 of those shots, man. So big night for him.
He was on it.
He was over 13 until he started throwing them in, though. I mean, he was like, wasn't he over 13?
Yes, he was over 13.
He put up 21 total shots.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I think with these guys, what happens with these other teams that they prepare for us, like you guys were saying, and you very good points. I mean, they're gonna these teams that the veil has been lifted, of invincibility has been lifted. I mean, they focus on their strong points, and it looks like to me. Eastern Michigan last night was focusing on their shooting. They said, if we're going to beat these guys, if we're going to have an opportunity, we've got to put points on the board. And it looks like that was their game plan last night to me.
Yep. Agreed.
And they did it well. So Indiana has Northern Illinois coming up Friday. You've got a few days in between. They've got tape to look at, which is they'll be doing nothing but that today, breaking that down. And so you've got a team coming in that is going to be for a challenge. Other than hitting shots, what else do they need to do right now?
Well, I mean, I think one thing they need to do is I thought last night they didn't take advantage early in the game of how well they played defensively.
Right.
They went 0 for 11, 1 for 14, and they were only up 10-0. They could have knocked them out in the first 10 minutes of the game. And then, again, after they're up 40-19 or whatever it was, if you make 1 or 2 threes at that point and get somebody down 25, you get them discouraged. But they never quite, and that's been a problem with this team. We've seen that happen before. They don't do the knockout punch, and that's the guards. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I mean, the front court is one of the better ones in the Big Ten. The guards are going to determine how good Indiana is. They got to have a dude in the backcourt, and they haven't had a dude since Yogi Ferrell.
That's exactly right.
Like, I'm the best player on the court. I'm going to dictate the way this game's played. I'm going to make a big shot when one needs to be made. I'm going to get a defensive stop. And I don't know whether it's going to be Xavier Johnson or Finney or whoever else, but one of those guys needs to really sort of become the guy who's like, this is my team and I'm running it.
That's exactly right. I thought Finney had some decent moments.
He did.
Last night. I thought he was hunting his shot a little bit more than he normally does, which is to say never. I thought he looked good. Xavier, you could see the potential, but you could also see why he drives coaches crazy with the turnovers. Right. He's more aggressive with the basketball than Rob is. He's looking to create, but he's going to make mistakes. So I think the two of them combined can be an interesting, part of an interesting backcourt, but I need to see it on a consistent basis, especially from Rob.
Yeah, Johnson made a big basket. When it was 64-62, that drive that he made was 16 seconds ago. That might have been the biggest basket of the game, and that's what I'm talking about. He took control. He showed confidence, and I don't think, like last year, I don't think they had a guy in the team that would have done something like that.
I agree. Yeah, you're right.
Parker Stewart hit those 2 big threes to start the game, and it was like, oh, wow, here it comes. You're starting that engine. But he would only take 3 more shots the rest of the night. That was something that Todd talked about and pointed out. It's like, man, he's got to get more involved, but the guards have to get him more involved as well. And Xavier Johnson has to help get him more involved. And you mentioned Rob Finney. I thought he looked comfortable is what he looked to me. His 3-point shot looked comfortable that he took. He was in traffic a few times and looked comfortable. They didn't turn the ball over much. That's they're under, what was it, under 10?
I think they had 8.
And 4 of those come in the very first couple of minutes, I think.
Right.
So they don't turn the ball over toward the end of the game, but that's a positive. You're trying to find some positives there.
I think you saw some things that you can work with. I mean, look, when the ball's not going in, you're going to look really awful. I mean, it's just as simple as that. I thought they ran their offense well. I mean, I think they got a little stagnant and the ball started to stick a little bit late when Eastern started making their run. But I liked a lot of what I saw. It's just a matter of making the damn shot. And hell, man, go to the Hyper building, find some guy from Bedford, Indiana, and let him shoot, for crying out loud.
Where was Anthony Leal? He's supposed to be a shooter. He didn't get in the game.
He did not get in the game, I know.
Neither did Lander.
Yeah, well.
That's questions that came up. Lander and Leal did not make it in. It was a 9-man rotation total used last night.
Right. Jordan
Geronimo did. You saw his athletic ability, but not a lot more. Todd calls him an OG type, and he is. He's still has to find his offensive, is he going to shoot? What's he going to do? He's an all-around kind of guy. I get that, getting rebounds and making some fantastic dunks. But if you're going to be in there, I think if you look at the plus minus, he was -9 when he was in, or 12, -12. But that could also be attributed to the guys around him, the rotations. But he's not a shooter yet. What is he offensively?
Yeah, exactly. Right now he's an athlete.
Right.
I'm not sure if he can play basketball, but he's an athlete.
He needs to be an offensive rebounder and a facilitator and a hustle guy.
Right.
Until he develops some kind of a face-up game. He backed he backed somebody down in the second half and put up a shot and didn't go in, but he had that one alley-oop dunk that was impressive. But yeah, he needs to develop a face-up game, improve his ball handling, and become comfortable with his jumper.